You're live, Chair.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Corporate Budget and Corporate Scrutiny Management Board, which is being live streamed. My name's Councillor Luke Giles and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. Can I ask all attendees to mute your microphones unless you have been invited to speak? If you wish to speak, please use the hand up icon or put a message in the chat and we will invite you to speak. Obviously, when you are invited to speak, if you switch your mic on, and then obviously once you've finished, remember to turn your microphone off. Finally, can I ask all members to introduce themselves. Elaine Giles, please.
Councillor Elaine Giles, Chair of the Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Board.
Liam, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Councillor Liam Priest. I'm the Vice Chair of the Children's Services and Education Scrutiny Board.
Bob Piper.
Yeah, Councillor Bob Piper, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Adult Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you. I believe we have Paul Moore as well. Paul.
Hi, Councillor Paul Moore, Chair of the Neighbourhood Scrutiny Board.
Thank you for that. And we'll move on to the agenda and start the meeting. Apologies for absent. The only apologies we've had is Laura Rollins, and that is it. Everybody else is present. Thank you for attending. Members to declare any interests in matters to be discussed. Obviously, if any members have any interests or political party whips on anything, please declare that now. No. Additional items of business. There are no other additional items of business. So we will move on to item number 4. The budget for 21 to 22 and 23 to 24. We will need to move into private session for that due to the nature of the item. So I will move the motion that the public and press are exempt from the rest of the meeting. This is to avoid the possible disclosure of exempt information under Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. I don't think this is a private session item.
Item number 4. It's got on there private session. No. Okay, then we won't move into private session then. Can I please hand over to the officers who are presenting this item?
Councillor Giles, if it's okay, I'll be opening the budget, and then officers are on hand to also help with any sort of questions or any other concerns that members may have. So first of all, introduce my name is Councillor Ali. I'm Cabinet Member for Resources and Core Services, and I'll be opening up this particular item. So the item today, as you discussed earlier, is Budget 2021-22 and the provisional settlement report we have on this. And to open up the local government provisional finance settlements, once again, a 1 year only settlement, and a number of planned reforms to the local government funding system have been put on hold due to COVID-19. The provisional settlement maintained a referendum limit for general council tax increases at 2%, also allowed an additional 3% at a social care precinct, which could be implemented across 21-22 and 22-23. The 21-22 budget for Sandwell is based on 1.99% increase in general council tax and a 1% adult social care precinct. The other main headlines for Sandwell were business rate top-up was approximately £200,000 higher than projected, additional funding of £600,000 relating to a new lower tier services grant, an additional social care grant of 4.7 million, COVID emergency grant allocation of 11.280 million, local council tax support scheme indicative allocation of 3.6 million, which is to be used to reduce council tax bills in 21-22, funding for recoverable council tax business rate losses 2020-21 still are to be yet announced. The provisional settlement is broadly in line with the pertinent planning assumptions of the council's medium financial strategy. However, COVID-19 has had a number of impacts on the budgetary position, and these are: it has not been possible to take the necessary actions to address a number of budget pressures over the last 12 months, and therefore the expenditure budget has been adjusted to cover these additional costs. There is a projected deficit on the collection fund of 2020 and 2021, This is the difference between the amount of business rent and council tax was expected to receive compared to the amount actually received. This deficit gets carried forward and spread across 3 years. We're also anticipating that a reduction in council tax rate and business rate in 2022 compared to the existing medium-term financial strategy as a result of the impact of COVID-19. As a result of these, the estimated funding shortfall for 2022 is 13.8 million, and this will be covered by, firstly, the use of one-off earmarked balances that are no longer required or that have been built into the base budget. Secondly, COVID-19 emergency funding to cover the collection fund deficit for 2020-21 and a reduction in business rate and council tax 21-22. This is the first year that the council has used reserves to balance the budget, and it's important to know that this will not affect our free balance position. However, these are one-off funding sources, and it's vital that we now start looking at saving proposals to cover the funding shortfall in future years. The future budget report based on the council, so on the final local government finance settlement, will be presented to Cabinet on the 24th and then to full council early March. And I welcome this opportunity to present it to budget scrutiny meeting at today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Which officer's going to come in now?
So we've got Rebecca with us today, acting section 151 officer.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Rebecca. If you want to take over.
I wasn't intending to do anything further in addition to what Councillor Ali's already said. I was just intending to answer any questions if there's any on the report.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any questions? Liam's got his hand up, so if I can invite Liam to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just quickly, Councillor Ali alluded to the spending of reserves. I know over the previous, well, nearly 9 years that I've been a councillor, we have dipped into reserves as a one-off source of funding on numerous occasions. My apologies if I've missed the figures in the report or the appendices attached to it, but what is our current reserve position at the moment?
Let me just find that for you. It's not included in the report, the provisional settlement report, but it is included in the final report that's going to Cabinet next week, and it will be in the full council report. So at the end of 2019-20, our general fund balance was approximately £42 million. Of that, we've got a revenue contribution to capital of just over £1 million, carry forward within directorates of 8.6 million, and earmarked items of 20.9 million. So our free balances at the end of 2020 were 11.5 million, and that equates to 4.59% of our net controllable expenditure budget. So it's within the percentages that we would expect it to be.
Yeah, thanks for that. Chair, am I able to come back in?
Okay. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, just on the just continuing on that thought there with the, again, apologies if I've missed it in the masses of numbers, but what was the government settlement to us for this financial year? I know Councillor Ali suggested that, well, said that things have changed slightly for the extraordinary circumstances we've had in the last 12 months and continue to face, and we have had some extra funding from the government to deal with those. But what was the central government grant to us that has been approved for the coming financial year, and what's the difference in that compared to the previous financial year?
In the only funding, well, we get a few different grants from the government, but the main one that we get now is the business rates top up, because we don't get the revenue support grant anymore because we're 100% business rates authority. So in terms of the business rates top up, for next year. We're getting 41.8 million for that, and that compares to 41.6 last year, so it's slightly higher. There are other funding streams that the government provide as well. One is the social care grant, which has increased quite a lot between last year and this year. I think the additional amount was 4.7 million compared to what we were expecting. They've also introduced a lower tier services grant, which we've been allocated, I think, 600,000 through that. And then the new homes bonus is the other funding stream, which we've been allocated 1.3 million for next year, and that's a reduction of 1.6 million, but we were expecting that. We did know that was due to reduce. So there's various different funding streams, but across the board, the settlement was more positive than we were expecting.
Chair, may I come in again?
Yeah.
What is the lower tier services grant?
It's a grant that that is to cover councils that provide lower tier services, and it's basically to ensure that we've got it's sort of giving you a floor in your funding. So if you don't get enough funding through other areas, then this is sort of a top up to your funding.
So sorry, just define a lower tier for me. Is this based on some sort of demographic calculation they make of the socio-economic circumstances of the area, or what's the?
No, it means the different types of local authority services that are provided. So some councils only provide upper tier services. We provide both. So
for example, if you have a 2 or 3 tier system with a county and
yes,
districts,
yes.
and so unitary authorities get this, do they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But we provide all the services and all the tiers for the area, don't we? But okay, so there isn't like a higher tier services grant. No. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around that, because is that new? Is that a new thing?
Yeah, it's new for this year. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for taking up so much time.
No problem, Liam. Bob Piper.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'm not sure whether this is a question for you, Rebecca, or whether it's a question for Councillor Ali, but earmarked balances are distinct from general reserves in as much as that they are balances which have been previously allocated to either service improvements or services that we want to carry out, and we've budgeted for them. So presumably, and this is really the question for Councillor Ali, the Cabinet have taken a decision not to continue with these services. And what are they then? Because we don't know that.
I'll ask Rebecca to come on this bit, because I don't have the detail in front of me.
Yeah, it's earmarked balances are balances that we set aside at the beginning of the end of the last financial year for things that we think might happen, or as you say, projects that are short-term projects and can be funded from one-off sources. So in terms of the earmarked balances that have been used to balance the budget next year, there aren't any that mean that we won't be able to do any projects that we've planned to do. And what I've done is either built in the expenditure into the base budget, and where it's become apparent that those are ongoing costs or projects that we want to continue with, or the other area of balances where we don't need those balances. So we'd set aside funding, for example, for the borrowing costs in case we invested extra in the airport. So that's not being required. So there aren't any of them that mean project or work is going to have to stop.
Sorry, so there aren't any cuts to services that we'd already planned that are now no longer going to take place?
No, there's no cuts to services as a result of it.
Okay. Just one other question really, and I think it's on page 14 of the report. It's got the sort of budgetary parameters, and it's got projections going forward for the pay award of 1%. It's got 5% for gas, but it seems to have 15% per year for electricity. Are we expecting an explosion in electricity price?
Yeah, it's it's something that we ask our procurement colleagues for the information on about that, and that is the advice that they've given us in terms of ongoing increases in the electricity costs.
That's an incredible increase over 3 years, year on year, 15% on 15% on 15%. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Paul Moore, you're indicating you want to come in?
I'd like a little bit of further clarification around the rationale for the proposed increase in council tax and the level that's been set, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, just coming on there.
Could I perhaps clarify it with a couple of comments first, and then you can.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
I mean, obviously, everybody knows we're going through a global pandemic at the moment, but in terms of the sort of level of service, particular that some residents in Sandwell are receiving, you know, things like litter collections, bin collections, etc., that have been disrupted, the disruption to services in terms of repairs, etc. It just seems a really kind of difficult pill to swallow that we're going to increase council tax based on, you know, on the level of services that people are currently receiving at the moment. Obviously, as I said, I'm quantifying that with the fact that there is a pandemic on, but it's quite a bit of a hard sell to go back out to communities and say you've got to pay more council tax when actually the level of service overall, in terms of the range of services you'd normally expect the council to deliver, have been severely disrupted this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Moore. I guess the main thing here is to understand that, in particular to those services, when you look at what Sandwell Council offers in comparison with the councils, particularly in relation to weekly bin collections, obviously there's more demand on our services, and unfortunately, due to pandemic, a lot of workers who work in those areas have been hit by the virus, and you know, when you have 7 councillors who are literally bordering on you, all fighting for the same agency staff, trying to get, you know, the same staff to do the same work, obviously leaves a hole and doesn't allow everybody to get what they want. But we're obviously doing the very best we can. This is why a decision has been taken to delay the green waste collection and ensure we can get on top of the recycling and the black bin collection, so we can start offering, you know, getting those services back on again, and then obviously start looking at getting green waste collection. But obviously that decision is still under review, given how we get on with the green recycling collection and the bins.
Did you want to come back in on that, Paul? Councillor Moore, you still got your hand up?
Sorry, I'm not entirely sure it really answers the point I was making, which is that I think it's a very hard sell for the council to be putting the argument across that council tax actually needs to increase at the moment. I think there's an argument certainly for the element allocated to social care, but I think in terms of the remaining proposed increase, that's not related to the precept. I think it's quite a hard sell to take back out there to people and the communities at the moment.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I'll probably agree with Paul on that one. I think from the public's perspective, there's, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's not being done, unfortunately, and obviously the public won't see it from our point. So I think, I mean, if we've got to put it up, then we need to give the public the full detail and explain to them exactly why it's got to go up and why we're not having bin collections, and I mean, simple things like litter picking as well. Seems to be a massive hole somewhere, and we need to get this picked up. But maybe we could bring that to a future meeting around that, Paul, if you want. I know I've got Liam indicating he wants to come in. So Liam.
Yeah, just to sympathise with Councillor Moore's point and with Councillor Ali's position as well. Obviously, it's a difficult balancing act to appreciate and understand the frustrations that many residents have had over the last few months with disruptions to services, unavoidable disruptions to services, I might add, and also the balance that Councillor Ali has to make with actually keeping the council solvent. What I would ask Councillor Ali just briefly is just on Councillor Moore's point. was there any debate with yourself and your cabinet colleagues or with senior officers around the proposed increase in council tax, and whether we did have to go for the 1.99% or whether other options were laid out for you for a lower increase or no increase at all? I'm just interested in what information you were provided in the lead up to your decision.
Do you want to come in on that, Councillor Ali?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and thank you for the questions. Definitely in relation to cabinet, there was a quite intense discussion, and there was various views coming from both sides, all sides, in relation to how far we go in relation to council tax, if we put council tax up and the need for it. But what we have found out is that we definitely need to put council tax up in relation. If you look at the budget in relation to next year, that we will have to start making cuts next year. And before we start looking at services, our priority is to make sure that we save the services, trying to keep the services that we have already as much as possible. And in order to do that, we need to have money in the kitty. And this is one thing that by increasing council allows us to kind of get those key services that we want to, those residents are currently receiving in this council that other residents aren't receiving in other councils. So in relation to Councillor Moore's question, the need primarily is because of the budget and trying to offset a lot of those cuts that decisions we're going to have to make next year, and trying to ensure that we can get some money coming in. In relation to Councillor Priest's question, there was a healthy discussion in cabinet. Not everybody was in agreement, but with a democracy, everything goes to a vote, and the vast majority of people are in agreement to agree with the position that we've taken. Please also bear in mind that councils surrounding us have all decided. Most of them have gone with a 4.99% increase in council tax. We've obviously had a very good discussion with officers and as a cabinet, and we felt because of the burden and obviously because of COVID, we're not going to go ahead, and we wouldn't feel right for to go ahead with a full 4.99%. So the decision we took at 2.99% is literally the bottom we felt we could go at, while still being able to provide a good level of services to residents.
Thank you for that. Liam, did you want to come back in?
No. I think that's the point worth reiterating that Councillor Ali said there, that other councils in neighbouring authorities have opted for steeper increases in council tax, and Sandwell's tried to limit that increase as best as we can. That's certainly very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks you. Bob Piper.
Yeah, can I say that I agree entirely with Paul's point that it's a difficult sell, but actually it's something, and I have some sympathy with both the Cabinet and Councillor Ali on this one really. The funding we're talking about isn't the funding for the year that has just gone, which we have seen some reduction in services. It's for next year, for the services we're going to provide next year. And actually, by not increasing the council tax by as much as we were allowed to do, we're actually making cuts in what we're allowed to do going forward, because if you don't increase it by 1% this year, you don't get an extra 1% next year in terms of your allocation. You're still only allowed to lift it by whatever the cap is the government said. So you lose that money going forward if you do that. The other point I would make really on this is that, and I've made this point actually in terms of social media in my own ward, that if you've got several hundred people off with COVID, self-isolating or sick with it, you don't not pay them. You've still got to pay their wages. But nobody's suggesting surely that we don't pay people who are off sick. So the actual service savings aren't massive in terms of that. You may not empty the bin, but you're not actually saving in terms of the salaries of the officers concerned, really. So I think to some extent there's a justification for saying because of COVID we've still had outgoings, even though we haven't been able to provide perhaps the full range of services that we would have liked.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bob. Did you want to make a comment on that, Councillor Ali?
Well, thank you, Chair, and Councillor Piper, I concur with your comments, and certainly in relation to your later comments. But having to get agency staff to cover those roles when people go off sick, obviously it does incur costs, and unfortunately everybody is fighting for the all the same staff for the particular area in relation to bins. But we're just trying to do the very best we can, and we are getting around to everybody. This is why we've made the decision not to go with ahead with the green waste collection as early as we would have liked to have gone ahead with, and just allow us to catch up with the backlog we have. And then hopefully once we get on top of that, we can start getting to collecting the green waste as well. Thank you.
Councillor Paul indicating you wish to ask a question.
Not so much a question. I mean, it's just a point again. I mean, I'm not quite sure if Councillor Ali's maybe missing the tone of what some of the members are saying. I mean, you referred again to the green waste bin collection, for example, being delayed. You know, I understand again that that's due to the pandemic, but that's yet again another service that residents would expect to be receiving for their council tax, and they're not. Which again, it just labours the point of why it's so difficult to go back and sell the argument that council tax needs to increase at the moment.
Did you want to come back in on that, Councillor Ali?
Yeah. Well, again, it's a point going back again. The fact we are still offering a weekly service from everything. So obviously, there's more of a demand, there's more need, and therefore to be able to provide those services, there's obviously a cost to it, and we need to get that cost and make sure we're still able to provide those services in the long term.
Okay, thanks for that. Liam Priest, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I have sympathy for both Councillor Moore's points because I've heard it from residents in my ward, and I have sympathy for Councillor Ali's position, and no doubt Councillor Ali himself has heard it from residents in his ward that you know, some of the frustrations that have bubbled up over recent months when services have become disrupted. I think, Chair, that if Scrutiny were minded, I think we, you know, a possible action we could take is to simply encourage the Cabinet and Councillor Ali to do everything in their power to maintain services at the expected level for constituents and residents going forward, and acknowledge the fact that it has been an incredibly difficult time to manage services and disruption was inevitable, but the council will do all it can to eliminate long-term disruption and return to normal services. Chair, if we were minded to say that to Councillor Ali or the Cabinet, I think it would be an appropriate measure if members were minded to do that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think Councillor Ali's obviously taken out everything that we're saying this evening, and no doubt we'll be taking that back. And I just want to add on to that, I mean, we need to keep the public informed of what's going on. I think, I mean, as long as they're aware of the facts and aware of what's going on, and I mean that there might be some disruption this week, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll get back up and running and get things going again. And I mean, reiterate that we're the only, I think I might be wrong with this and somebody might want to put me right, but I think we're the only council around here that do a weekly bin collection, and if we can guarantee that, I mean, for our residents, that we're going to keep that high level of service, and I mean, after this pandemic, things will go back to normal, and they will still get them weekly bin collections and a lot of the frontline stuff that in Sandwell that we've kept open, and neighbouring councils have shut. So I mean, there's no doubt Wasim Ali will take that back and obviously feed that back to the Cabinet, and if that's it on that item, unless Councillor Ali wants to come in on anything before he goes.
Yeah, no, just want to say thank you very much, and thank you for your questions. I understand your frustration, and again, it's, you know, my residents are just as furious as your residents are, and we'll be making every effort we can to get things back to normal as quick as we can. But I definitely take on your points, and we'll definitely be representing to Cabinet in the future as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, if no members have got anything else to add on that item, we will move on to the corporate plan. Which officer is going to present that? Is that David?
Councillor.
Yeah, I think Councillor Ali was going to come back in on the corporate plan.
Okay, back over to Councillor Ali then.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're allowed to, I'll just set the tone, and then if there's obviously any questions, I think we can kind of take them on together, if that's okay. So this report is about the corporate plan, the key achievements we have made towards delivering it over the last year, and our intention to refresh the plan in the context of the pandemic. The report also includes our budget for 21-22, which we've just scrutinised, The corporate plan, Big Plan for Great Places, sets out our plan for the council over the next 5 years. The plan was adopted in March last year, and a lot has been happening since then. The situation has, of course, been transformed by the COVID pandemic. The council responded to this crisis in an active programme we have called Reset and Recovery. At the same time, as impressive responding to the pandemic, we have continued to deliver against the strategic outcomes of the corporate plan. This report sets out our key achievements over the last year. I'm particularly proud of how we've responded effectively to the emergency of the pandemic as one council, establishing our business community rapidly and calmly. We have shown how we can mobilise flexibly and quickly. A true one council, one team response where departments have been irrelevant to the job we've needed to do. This goes for how we have worked with our partners too. We have put together as a whole place to support the people of Sandwell. Organisational boundaries between us have been invisible. At the same time, we have continued service delivery where it was possible, and I'm so proud of our overall achievements and our frontline services supporting our communities in times of crisis. To do this, we have had to shift our services to a digital platform where possible. This has been outstanding and very impressive. And we have also continued to deliver against our strategic outcomes in the corporate plan in many impressive ways. Given the distractions of the pandemic has posed, I hope you would join me in extending our thanks to all staff during what has been a challenging year. From the offset, we have invested considerably efforts to learn about the impact of the pandemic and what we needed to do to address it. The Cabinet received an impact assessment report in September. Our COVID impact plan in phase 1 and 2 of the Reset and Recovery programme has highlighted how much our borough and our organisation has been affected by the pandemic. We must now ensure our strategic framework reflects the massive changes that have happened over the last year and reset our priorities accordingly. We're now in the process of analysing how the plan needs to change to become fit for the new reality. A robust engagement plan in place to ensure that the refreshed corporate plan reflects the views of members, partners, stakeholders, and most importantly, the community. The engagement will also include sessions with members covering service and financial planning. In other words, how we will meet financial pressures whilst achieving our strategic outcomes. The Cabinet has received a report on the provision of local government finance settlement and has been asked to approve the net revenue target benefit for service, so budget for services. Services have developed these budgets in line with local government financial settlement as set out in the budget paper. Further details on the service budget are continued in the appendices and will go forward to form a report on the Council's finances that was considered in Cabinet on the 24th of February and then on to Council in due course. Thank you very much, and we'll take over any questions. Thank you, Councillor Giles.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ali. Has any members got any questions around the corporate plan? Councillor Liam Priest.
Thanks, Chair. Just quickly, I too echo Councillor Ali's thanks and congratulations to our staff for pulling together and keeping the show on the road, as it were, in an incredibly difficult 12 months. But I wanted to ask, when we're looking at our corporate plan and we're looking at the renewal to it, what has the pandemic taught us about how our services will be used? And I just want to give one example. I mean, for me, just as a resident more than a councillor, I've noticed our parks and green spaces being used a lot more because it's the only place people can go to during lockdown. And from whilst it may not fit strictly into the corporate plan, I think it's something we need to look at when we look at revenue generation in the budget. I know that down in Sandwell Valley, the refreshments the council have sold to people there have been incredibly successful, and that's something we didn't do before, or we didn't do well enough before, and we didn't get the custom. So that seems to hopefully be something that we'll continue as a lesson going forward, and a service that we've identified that people want to see. So yeah, I just wanted to know, what lessons do you think are emerging from the pandemic around how our services are going to have to change in future, or what positive things have we learned coming out of the pandemic? Thank you.
I don't know who wants to come in on this question. I've got Neil and David waiting very eagerly to come in.
If it helps, Chair, I think Neil will come in on this question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we've learned a lot about services. I think certainly we've learned about engaging with partners in delivering frontline services, and how we can be more effective around that, and we've got lessons to carry forward into the future. And certainly some of the points you've made around, Councillor Priest, you've made around local services being utilised, parks, open spaces, and people understanding what's in the neighbourhood and available have been absolutely key. I think there are a lot of things that we are still waiting to see how they evolve and how they emerge, which will be around whether people have still got the appetite to continue using those services when restrictions start to ease off and people can venture further afield or return to their normal sort of day-to-day living. Clearly we've got challenges in areas like adult social care around people's appetite for how they receive that care, how people's appetite for how they engage with services. We know a lot of teams have moved to a more online and digital solution and a more remote way of delivering services, and it'll be about people's appetite for continuing that in future. So I think you're right, there's been a lot of positives, a lot of things that people have started to utilise that maybe they didn't in the past. And certainly what we want to do is make sure that we continue to support those services, particularly where they've done good over the period of the pandemic. But we also have to be mindful about whether people's changing behaviours or changing appetite for how they receive services then potentially brings with it a future pressure, and we're still monitoring that and we're still trying to understand that, because we haven't quite emerged out the other side of the peak of the pandemic yet. So it's still going to be very much a watching brief, I'm afraid.
Liam, did you want to come back in on that, or does David want to add anything?
I think the only thing that I'd perhaps add to that, Chair, is it's going to be a long process, isn't it, of recovery. I think it's unlikely that we'll just move out of a lockdown and it will be as if things move back to normal. All of the news, the media that gets talked about at the moment is all about a long road to recovery. So there's going to be no quick fixes moving forward. And I think Neil's absolutely right. It's really important that we listen to members, that we listen to communities, and we work with them to develop our services in the best way for them.
Thanks for that, David. Liam, did you want to come in on it?
Yeah, just to quickly, no, thanks Neil, and thanks David for that kind of comprehensive response there. And I know that much, but it would be how the information and the data where data is available and applicable does lead us. I'm getting a bad network quality thing on my laptop. I hope you can still hear me all right. But what I wanted to say was just again as a point that goes into the corporate plan, but also links into the budget as things often do. I think the series of national lockdowns we've had and the enormous restriction that has been placed on people's everyday lives has probably focused people's attention a little bit more on what at a base level they expect and require from a local council. And for me, my sense of it, and it'll be interesting to see what, as you review the corporate plan, whether the consultation work you do backs this up or not. But my sense of it is that people fundamentally, they want a clean place to live, they want a safe place to live, and they want really excellent parks and green spaces to use. So I suppose it's not so much a question, it's more of a point that I think hopefully some of the work that will come out of the review of the corporate plan will be to focus our minds a little bit more on what residents actually expect us to do, and going forward we can really focus our investment into those services to meet residents' expectations. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, and I'd probably echo what Liam's saying, and I don't think normal life, I don't think we'll go back to that for quite some time, and I think life will be different. And obviously we've got to try and shape that corporate plan to be flexible and move with that. Neil and David, did you want to come in on anything else there? No.
I think it's a fair point, Chair. I completely agree. I seem to remember the last time that I came and spoke about a similar issue to this scrutiny board. One of the things we were talking about at the time was the restarting of grass cutting services, and I think that picks up on Councillor Priest's point entirely. You know, we get very, for obvious reason, we focus on really big ticket items, children's social care, adult social care, but actually we can't forget the very basic things that make people feel comfortable in their own neighbourhoods and communities. I think it's an absolutely spot on point.
Yeah, I think I was saying something similar to that to one of my ward colleagues the other day, that people just want the basics, and them basics affect everybody. I think they want a clean street, they want the grass verge cutting, they want the park cutting, and they've been emptied. It's just them and the basic things that unfortunately when they do go wrong, obviously the last agenda item, when they do go wrong, I mean, we have massive complaints on that, but obviously hopefully this year we can not get we'll try and manage it a bit better. I know last year we was with a pandemic, and it was, I mean, nobody had ever dealt with the pandemic before, and I don't think anybody could have imagined and even thought about how to deal with that, and trying to make that perfect response is impossible, isn't it? And I mean, on behalf of myself and the board, we thank all the members of staff that have basically come together and tried to deal with that in the best possible way. But I'll bring Bob Piper in next, if that's okay, David, and then I'll let you come in after Bob. Bob Piper.
Thanks, Jim. I think the one major thing we've learned over the last 11 months, which is particularly useful in terms of delivering the corporate plan going forward, is the ability to communicate with people remotely, that we don't have to have meetings in church halls in order to communicate with people and to and you know, it's only taken 11 months, but we've even learned, most of us, how to vote online now. So it'd be a way of communicating much better with individuals going forward in terms of the engagement on the corporate plan.
Yeah. I don't think we'll ever go back to meetings as normal. I think this makes it more flexible and easier. But David, did you want to come back in, or I know you took your hand down?
If it's okay, Chair, I think it was just reinforcing one of the comments Neil made, which is there's a lot of work that the council has been doing behind the scenes that isn't seen, and so government has announced myriad of grants that we pay to individuals who are shielding, or we pay to businesses. We've got millions and millions of pounds worth to pay out on those grants, and we have the same resource that we had prior to the grants, and the teams work incredibly hard behind the scenes to get those grants out, to make those payments, and all that activity is quite often not seen or not recognised, because you know it's not right in the front, at the front face. Things like COVID marshals, etc. There's lots of activity that the council has been doing that is not ordinary for us, and again, because we're constrained by our resource, that sometimes means that other things get squeezed in order for us to do that. Government announced, and I can't remember the exact number, about 9,000 more people on the shielding list last week, which means that the council needs to contact another 9,000 people and ensure ourselves that those individuals have the support. So I guess I just wanted to make the point, Chair, that lots of council services are under pressure, but there's also lots of activity that we're doing that people just don't see because it's all behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I mean, on the back of that, I think they only notice it when that 1% goes wrong, where something might go wrong. It's the big thing, but nobody notices all that stuff that goes on, and I mean, works well. It goes through, people get their monies. You never hear that. And obviously, once again, on behalf of the board, we want to thank every member of staff from the top to the bottom on how you've dealt with the pandemic and carry on dealing with it in such a remarkable way. But Liam Priest got his hand up.
Sorry, Chair, you were about to end on a very good point then, and I'm going to come in and ruin it. No, I just wanted to just really echo David's and Councillor Ali and your own comments, Chair, around the good things this council has done. I mean, right at the start of this pandemic, the food parcel service, the proactively contacting vulnerable people and ensuring they're safe and well, was an excellent initiative, and it was very well done. And I think the council deserves a lot of congratulations for that. But as you said, Chair, and you know, it is just getting these little things right and trying to keep normal service going as much as we possibly can, and trying to meet the expectations that residents still have on us, even in difficult times. But I, for one, you know, if there is a silver lining to all this, I do much prefer virtual meetings to traipsing up to the council house after work and having to spend a couple of hours there and then come home after the kids have gone to bed. So there have been some positives in all of it. So thanks, Chair.
No worries. I'll let you steal the limelight there, Liam. It's, I mean, we say about meeting, doing them at home via the internet. I think you might want to sort your internet connection out, Liam. But now,
thank you.
But now, yeah, I mean, I want to thank all the members of staff from the top to the bottom. I mean, from the ones who go out picking the litter to David and Neil, and I mean, a credit to the council. I mean, you've done us proud, and keep up the good work. Councillor Ali, do you want to come in on a closing point?
Yeah, I think it would be rude not to conclude the meeting without thanking the work that you and your board do in making sure the decisions we take are how to account. Remember, Sandwell doesn't have an opposition, so in respect, you are essentially holding the council accountable on behalf of the public. We don't get decisions right all the time, but this has been, like you said in your earlier comments, this has been something that's new to everybody. First time for a lot of us have been involved in a situation like this. And, you know, we're doing the very best we can. We're very proud and we're thankful that the work of Sandwell has been noticed by the LGA as best practice in relation to our test and trace system, which is now being used, and government departments are now asking, you know, Sandwell Council about, you know, how do you do it? You know, we want to get on board with it. So a lot of work, good work has been happening, but more importantly, the accountability has also been really good from Scrutiny to ensure that the cabinet and the executive and officers are making sure that we're continuing to deliver phenomenal services for our local people. So thank you from me to you.
No, thank you very much for that, Councillor Ali. And on that note, I believe that brings us to the end of the meeting. There's no other items on the agenda, and I want to thank you all for attending. And obviously, I'll see you next Wednesday, I believe. We're back again. Yeah, next Wednesday. So thanks for coming. Keep safe. Look after yourselves, and see you next week.
Cheers, Chair. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.